So, hello everyone, and welcome to another video of the Talking About Testing channel. I'm here today with Gleb Bahmutov from cy.press.io. Hi, Gleb.
Hi, Balmir.
I'm glad that you have accepted the invitation to be here with us today in the Talking About Testing channel. And I will ask for you that are watching the video to leave a like, subscribe to the channel to incentivize the initiatives of the Talking About Testing channel. And as you can see, today we are here with Gleb from Cypress. Gleb is a distinguished engineer at cy.press.io, and he has been helping the JavaScript community with lots of different um, libraries. And Gleb, I'm very glad that you are here. Could you introduce yourself, please?
Hello, everyone. Don't forget to subscribe to Valmir's channel, of course. He posts wonderful videos. I really enjoy watching them myself. I'm Gleb Bahmutov. I work at Cypress for 4 years now, and I used Cypress for a year before. So totally, I think only a few people in the world have more experience using Cypress and working on Cypress than me. Before that, I worked at financial startups, I worked at large companies, I worked at small companies doing computer vision, computer graphics, data visualization. But I was always passionate about software quality, right, Palmir? Like you can be in any industry, in every industry needs
Yeah,
their stuff to work. So if
exactly.
you know how to like write good software and test it and document and communicate well with our engineers, that's it. Frameworks come and go, industries, you can leave one industry, go to another, but you will always be in demand. You will always have like something to put food on your table. So, but I got to Cypress in a kind of like interesting way. I saw Cypress while working on at the different startup, and I liked it so much that we got into private beta, so we
Hmm.
could use Cypress to write tests, and it was just so good. And I was trying to maybe write some plugins for Cypress, document it, give like meetup presentation. And I was talking to the founder of a company, Brian Mann, and he was like, "Okay, you're doing such a good, talks about Cypress, right? You want to join us?" I was like, "Can you
That's
pay me?"
awesome.
And he's like, it was awesome, but he's like, "We don't have money right now. We're literally like just starting as a startup, right? We're trying
Hmm.
to bootstrap. We're trying to sell license to Cypress." And I was like, okay, maybe, if you actually raise money, right?
Hmm.
So, but because I have a family, right? And
So that you
my
can
wife,
pay me. Yeah.
yes, yes. I would, like, I love doing like talks about Cyprus and train, like whatever it takes, right? For free for them, right? But
Yeah,
in order for me to make it day-to-day job, like,
exactly.
and so, but they actually managed it, right? The company was very small, based out of an Atlanta. So not like New York, San Francisco, it's not like there is like VC money on a tree in
Yeah.
Atlanta. But they managed, raise the capital. I joined them and went to Atlanta the first day. We met around, we literally were like in one room. That's it, for five of us. And the first thing I started doing that Monday was trying to port Cypress to run on Windows, right? Build it on Windows so it runs. And it was kind of funny, Valmir, because before that, Cypress ran on Linux, right? Because on
Hmm.
CI and on Macs, right?
Yeah.
And
Unix-based
when,
systems.
right? So, and it's Electron based, thing. It's just, it should have been easy to port it. And it was easy,
Hmm.
but we just, before that, didn't have time. And so the first week I realized, okay, let's do Windows because we cannot keep telling our companies and our QAs like, hey, use Macs, right? Like,
Yeah.
or use, like, before that, we used to tell people like, oh, we don't have a Windows, test runner. Just buy yourself a Mac. So
Exactly.
I know like we kind of will get into this later. Like, how do you pick what to work on, right? But I
Hmm.
just want to say that when I got to the company, we've had so much to do, right? From CIs, from examples, documentation, Windows build, code signing the app, and so on. It
Hmm.
was like a wild ride. Like I literally did not kind of breathe for probably first year because we had so much to do to kind of fill the gaps.
But I
And
imagine that you have a lot of fun at the same time.
it really was, right? It's so much fun to be at a product-led company where you have,
Yeah,
here's what we do, right? And the product is for developers like yourself.
yeah, yeah.
But I was
I
always missing it before.
I before living here in the Netherlands, I lived in Norway, and I was part of the team of whereby.com, the tool that we are using
Yeah,
for this conversation. And it's so much fun when you are building a product that you are user of the product that you are
yeah,
building, because you can really influence like the features that are coming in and things that might not be so
yeah,
interesting and things like that. Like you, I felt a lot more engaged building a software that I was user of than just building a software for
yeah.
someone else to use that I have like no connection. So that's super
Yeah.
interesting.
Uh,
And many
well, Mir,
people, sure,
before we go, right, can I just point something out? You know where we experience that fun day to day, like
mhm,
you, me, like many of our watchers and listeners, open source. When you're
yeah,
doing open source, you're working on your own problems for yourself, right? Like who does open source for something they don't use or don't believe in? Nobody.
yeah,
You have to
exactly,
pay people to do that. So
exactly,
if you never experience the joy of working on something for yourself, contribute to open source project that you're using.
yeah.
You'll experience the joy.
Yeah, then it's like I worked also for GitLab, which is open source, and I also
Hmm.
was user of GitLab while building GitLab,
Yeah.
and it's the same thing. Like you, it's just more. The thing that I wanted to say is in regards to the open source thing is that sometimes it's different. It's difficult to differentiate when you are just having a good time and when you were working, because you just like what you do, right?
Yeah.
Yeah.
I,
So
yeah.
many people, Gleb, know you as a distinguished engineer at Cypress.io, and you briefly told you some places that you have worked on before. But could you tell us a little bit about what you did before, with maybe not too much details for the conversation not to be long, but not with too little as well?
Okay, so I started my career after grad school and I was doing 3D scanning with lasers and projectors. Then I was doing
Hmm.
Google Street View before Google Street View was doing it. And we were supplying both Google Street View and Bing Maps with virtual tours of restaurants and hotels out of Boston.
That is super
Then I moved to
interesting.
it was interesting and I really enjoyed it. But then I moved to MathWorks, the makers of MATLAB, the software that every engineer uses. And we were porting MATLAB to run on the web, right? So you don't install anything, but instead you just log in and here's your full UI
Yeah.
runs in your browser. And there is a machine somewhere in the cloud that actually does everything, right? So I worked there for a year, but it was very, very slow moving company, right? Which I understand. Like they have a reason to be slow moving, very thorough. I want something more fun. So I went back to a startup, went to a financial startup, and then I joined Cypress. So since we're on this big Valmir, and because this will air next week, I want to announce something, right? Valmir, isn't this cool to have an announcement? So for first 3.5 years, I was VP of engineering at Cypress, meaning I code everything for every engineer and every user, right? Like it's not like sitting around. Now I'm kind of doing everything with our customers and whatever I want, right? And I want to announce that today is my last day at Cypress.
Wow.
Okay. Yeah, it's been absolutely a joy. But I think I accomplished like so much,
Yeah.
right? That I kind of had an itch after 5 years of working on Cypress is like to go do something a little bit different.
And
And
you
so
sure have you
yeah,
leave a very nice legacy for the rest of the Cypress team to work on. I like to say I am a professional that I haven't spent more than 3 years in the same company since the beginning of my career. But and my people might see this as a bad thing, because you like I don't want to hire you because you might not stay here for a long time. But even in companies
exactly.
that I spend very little time, I felt that I left a very good legacy that people
Yes.
still use. And I don't think like there are some people that prefer to stay 10 years in a job, and then are
Yeah.
people that prefer to stay 6 months in every
Yeah.
different project. And if they like different people work differently, and like
Right.
you can still leave a good legacy, like even. And I feel a bit sad to see that like you were leaving, but at the same time,
Yeah.
I imagine that you will do things that you like, and I imagine that you were gonna have a lot more fun ahead.
I want to say something regarding like I'm leaving the company in a very positive,
Yeah,
mood, right? Um, it definitely changed. Now it's 50 people. It's a lot of more like um, planned work, right? Compared to what we did, right? It's
yeah,
just like,
yeah,
oh, I know what we need. Let me just build it really quick and then iterate, and then, right? So it's a different stage
yeah,
of a company, right? And we brought people who are really good at this stage right now.
yeah,
And we had a big company meeting yesterday, and I looked at the plans and we listened to the plans for next year. It's amazing. The features that are coming up in the future, and we can talk about something, like some of them, but I'm leaving the company in a very good place,
yeah,
right? As a company, as a business, right? Because there's a business as well. It's not just open source test
for
runner. It's
sure.
also the
Yeah,
dashboard.
yeah,
And over last 4 years, I grew a little bit myself, right? I used to be, kind of work separately, hack at night, do features. The last 4 years, I kind of removed blockers and worked with other people a lot and worked with outside, partners and
yeah.
users a lot. So I need something else now, right?
Yeah,
Where
I
I
see.
want to kind of contribute to people development and engineering productivity. So keep,
This
I
is
will post my,
something
yeah,
this is something that I have kind of decided to do this year, because until last year I was the employee of a company, and before that of other companies as well. And I've been teaching people how to do test automation and things like that. And I kind of realized that this is what I love to do, and I planned to work for myself for an year to see what I can achieve in this year, to see what I will do in the next year, if I will have to go back to find an employer, or if I will continue doing my own stuff.
yeah,
But I'm very glad that you realized that like before you were kind of doing the engineering part, and then you had the experience that made you grow to this other moment of your life, right?
yeah.
That's just awesome to hear. I think I didn't know that we had this like relations kind of and
Hey, we all go, right? But one thing I want to point out, you're one of Cypress ambassadors, right? Something that we started like, as a program a couple of years ago. And I want to tell like listeners what's going on with that program, right? So imagine if I tell you Cypress is great, use it by subscription. You'll be like, well, like, yeah, you're selling it, like your opinion, right? And then we figure out, right? We don't want to compare ourselves to other tools. Like, I don't think it's fair to other tools even,
yeah,
because we always be like, oh, you didn't use it in the right way or the newest version. So instead of us saying, oh, we're better than this tool or we don't do this better than our, we just say, this is what Cypress does,
yeah,
right? Here's how to do it. Here's how to solve your problem. And we kind of think that ambassadors are people who show Cypress really, really well, right? We're not paying you. We're not paying any ambassador, right?
yeah,
We promote your work, obviously, because we think you're showing Cypress in a very good way. But ambassadors are people who are really good at testing. And we can always point your work at your videos, your training course as a great example. Hey, you want something that's not subject, like my opinion? Go to Valmir, look at his training course, see how he explains things. And the ambassador program is now really popular, right?
yeah,
And many other companies now figure out, okay, we can do everything. We can also build a community of users and help them. But we need something in between, something like power users that we not paying, right? They're not employees of a company,
yeah,
but they're people who will be objective, when our users ask them questions because they're not employees. So many people confuse ambassadors and say, oh, they're like paid shills. No, 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 no.
Yeah.
These are just people who show and train and use Cypress in a way that we like a lot, but
Yeah,
we're not paying them.
and I love that you mentioned that like you don't want to compare yourself with other tools. I always say in my talks and videos and in lives on YouTube, like different tools solve different problems. For some
Yeah,
problems, you might want to have a different tool, but it and some
yeah,
people also think that they just have to have one tool and this one tool will solve all their
yeah,
problems. And it's not bad to have two or three different tools for solving two or three different problems, right? So
yeah.
it's nice to hear that from you. So let's try to go back to our agenda. And one of the things that I got super impressed when I was reading your personal website is the number of open source projects that you contribute. And you mentioned in the beginning like how much fun you have when you were working on open source. So could you tell us a bit of how did you started contributing to open source and why did you start contributing?
So one, it's so easy to have your own project nowadays, right? I remember back in the day, if I wanted to host a project and show it to someone and give them
Oh
code,
yeah,
I would like have use like SourceForge or like do my own site with like uploading zip, right? Like just crazy stuff.
yeah,
Then GitHub, probably 10 years ago, right, became a force where, hey, you want for free to host your code, other people can see it, write a README, boom, everyone can use it.
yeah,
I was like so mesmerized because especially with JavaScript, it's so easy to use other people's code and NPM came along, right? So it was so simple to share code and use other people's code. I
yeah,
come from C++ world where if you set up your project and you have maybe like 3, 4 external libraries, third-party libraries, you never touch them because you don't like it always stops working and your linker and compiler cannot use anymore, right? So it was super hard to use third-party libraries. But with JavaScript, boom, especially with
yeah,
Node, right? Not it was before bundler. So in Node land, it was absolutely incredibly simple. I didn't want to program like web server, so just grab Express.
yeah,
I don't want to program all these little utilities. Grab like lodash underscore lambda and go.
yeah,
So, but there was always something missing, and I was like, well, let me just write my thing for myself, right? And host it on GitHub, published on npm. And once you figure out how to do it, it probably will take you half an hour to do it again and again. And then like I wrote my own like Yeoman generator, so a new project would be like one command.
yeah,
And after that, boom. But I'll tell you, Valmir, something else that happened 10 years ago. So my son was born, right? And here's what changed. Before that, I could do whatever I want 24/7. Well, aside from
yes,
job, right? But there was always time. I was like, I'll do it tomorrow, I'll do it later. And what happened? Well, I never done much, right? But as soon as my son was born, there was a hard limit. I
yeah,
could do my coding, let's say between 8 and 10 p.m., right? Because after that, I'm tired. Before that, I have to take care of him.
yeah,
By being like so time restricted, it forced me to actually like prioritize and say what's important and do it right away and be done.
awesome,
So being put in this constraining time box, my productivity skyrocketed. So everything you see on my website, glebbahmutov.com, it was created in the last probably 10 years or before that, or like or later, right? So here's what you do if you're listening. Start using GitHub. Try to publish, your own work on npm so you can use it. Right? Small little modules. Doesn't matter if nobody else uses it. And put a time box. Say, hey, I want to solve it. If not, I move on.
yeah.
Otherwise, you're just wasting time.
Yeah, it's so true that when you have a constraint, you have to decide what to do, and especially what not to do, and then you you go and do it, right? Like I remember when I worked for whereby.com there in like 2016 and 17, uh, we had three different web projects. And in the first project, at that time we were using Protractor, which was for Angular apps. And then I built some helper libraries privately internal in our repository. And then in a second web project, I had to copy and paste that. And then came a third web project, and I told to myself, you know what, it's time for it to become an npm library,
Yeah.
because then I can delete all this code and simply import it and
Yeah.
use it. And I think the nicest thing is that, like, I like to think that open source, usually they born because you were solving a problem of yours, and then
Yes.
you make it generically possible for others to use, and then
Right.
the fun starts because other people start using your project
Yeah.
that you solved for yourself. But like that's the thing that you mentioned. I don't want to build
Yeah.
a web server. I'll grab Express. Like the
Yeah.
things are already there, they already exist, so why to reinvent the wheel if you can simply use something that someone has already built, right?
Right.
Of course, you
And
have to pay attention to, like, how active is it being contributed and things like that. But it's already there, and it's open
there
source.
is
You can
one
continue contributing.
there's one more step, right, where it becomes so much fun when
Yeah,
someone else contributes to your repository,
yeah,
right?
yeah,
That's like you're like, wow, not only someone's using it, but they want to help,
yeah,
right? Like that's a big one, right? Don't worry if you have a bunch of problems and issues open in your code, right? If it works for you, it probably works for many people. But
yeah.
when someone else comes, fixes things, that's just nice. It's a good feeling.
Yeah, that's so true. Like for Protractor Helper, which is a library that I created, I I maintained it myself for quite some time, and at some point, people started using, and then came this guy and refactor all the documentation, and it made it
Yeah.
so great. And I was so glad that I invited him to be a contributor together
Yes.
with myself. And from now on, he contributes sometimes even more than myself,
Yeah.
and he helps people that want to contribute as well.
Yeah.
After some time, we invited people to translate the documentation to Portuguese, because I'm Brazilian, I speak Portuguese, so it was
Yeah.
just like the right thing to do. So that's fun. And do you have any advice for anyone that is willing to contribute to open source? Well, actually, you just said, but if you could repeat so that people would have this fun that we have when contributing to open source.
Start with something small, right? If you have some little problem that you're trying to automate and you write a little script, put it on GitHub, right? Just for yourself so that you can always find it, fetch it again, have
Yeah, it
different
doesn't
versions
need, it
of it.
doesn't need to be on npm, right?
It doesn't. You can start just GitHub just for your code, right?
Yeah,
Write a README so a month from now or a year from now you can go back and understand how to use it.
yeah,
Otherwise, you lose it, right?
yeah,
Then maybe set up some kind of test, right? GitHub gives you GitHub Actions for free.
yeah,
So you're learning how to do continuous integration testing. And the biggest advice for anyone who just starts their career, right? Maybe you're in college or boot camp or still in high school,
yeah,
right? By doing little projects that you probably have as homework on GitHub publicly. It could be private also, right? You don't have
yeah,
to make. But doing on GitHub and setting up tests and writing README, you know what will happen when you apply for a job and they ask like, well, do you have any examples? You're like, here it is,
yeah.
right?
Your portfolio is there.
Exactly, portfolio there. You don't have to create fancy websites. You just have, your personal examples that you worked on GitHub. And I'll look at them and then I'll say, oh, you can write README, perfect. You can set up tests, perfect. Let me look at your code. I can understand the code. It's not terribly wrong. It's not overcomplicated. Love it. That's
Yeah,
the best proof that you're capable of doing 99% of everyone's jobs these days, literally.
yeah, yeah. I had a live last week, and one person asked me exactly that. Like, should I have a GitHub of my own just to publish my code? And I told this person, yeah, you surely have to do that, because
Yeah.
it's your portfolio there. And like, even not I would go even beyond that. Like, before publishing things on GitHub, I used to document my own work, and it
Yeah.
was for myself. So
Yes.
I used to have issues with, like, how do I deal with iframes in test automation. And then I had to look into documentation and Stack Overflow. And one day I told to myself, no, I will document that, and I'll create a blog post. And when I have to when I have this problem again, I'll look to that blog post. And then people might ask me, how do I deal with that? And then I just share the link with them, and I don't need to answer the question because the question is already there. So it's like it just becomes natural, right?
Yeah. You document for yourself, right? That's it. And then you
Yeah,
share solutions. Like I cannot tell you how many times I search my own blog post for something because I remember it's there and I
myself
find
as
it
well.
and that's it. I know it. And some of engineers I work with, they kind of joke that 50% of my messages to them are just links to my blog post. Here it is. Here it
Yeah,
is. Here's the
yeah.
solution to what you just asked me, right? It
I
works wonders. It builds up very quickly.
I used to do that with my own blog post, and now I do with yours as well. Sometimes I don't have the answer, but I know yours have.
Hey,
That
Valmir, we have to do something about videos, man. Right? You create a lot of videos
yeah.
showing how to test it. I create the same thing. My biggest problem right now, they're not scraped and not searchable.
Hmm.
So we have to come up with a solution because for text, it's searchable already. For videos, we have to come up with something better.
That's true. That's very true. Gleb, yeah, let's think about something in this regard. Please, free to invite me to hack on something, and we can try.
Yeah.
I also got very impressed on your on the amount of content that you create, both on your blog and on your YouTube channel. So could you talk a bit of your view on the importance of knowledge sharing nowadays?
So if you don't write, like you said, like solution for yourself, you will have to recreate it.
Yeah.
Okay? Because you'll forget it. Like I write everything because I forget everything. Like clearly. Like my memory is not that great anymore, right? So I forgot so many things, but because I've written some of them down, I can find it and avoid doing the same work. So writing is the best memory advice. And also it's good for understanding yourself. Once you write
Hmm.
something, it actually clarifies things.
And
But
you
here,
become better after you start writing. You
definitely,
yeah,
definitely. It will be very much easier. You get the hang of technical writing, right?
yeah.
So here's something else that I noticed. When I write, it takes maybe an hour to write a blog
Hmm.
post. And the blog post could be quite large, and you can ask like, why? How does it take so? Because I'm actually thinking about that for a while before I sit down to
Yes.
write. Write is just
Yeah.
mechanical. Thinking of and kind of solving it takes a while before. But here's what I do. I have like a little text document locally, and I have good ideas for blog posts, right? For the future myself. And those ideas, they come from you, from our users, from our questions on Slack, on chat, on from GitHub issues, from Twitter,
Yeah.
right? If I don't have a good answer, like how to test some kind of iframe, I'll like, I should probably look into this, and I'll just have a good idea. Then, if I see something like a good example of like let's say iframe, I'll like, okay, and I'll note, use this as an example, and
Yeah.
then I'll sit down like, can I actually write a test? And if I write it, right again, use a separate repo, start a new example. If it works, then I'll like, okay, boom, I can write a blog post. It will take an hour, right? And then it's there for forever, right? And for videos, it's kind of the same way. If I see a question and I'll just have to come up with like, what example do I want to use? And then I'll give you a professional secret. There is a video recording program called Recut, right? From Dave Cedia, right? He's on Twitter. Recut. Okay. So when I record using OBS. I record me kind of coding the solution, talking about it. And I think what to say, then I say it, then I pause again, then maybe I'll like look at the code, right? So I have big pauses in my videos. And Recut removes silence automatically. So I have this
Awesome.
long video where I don't write a script. I just know what I want to say. And I think about like the next sentence or two sentences, show it, talk about it. Then I think what next, show it all. And then Recut removes pauses and I have nice, smooth video. And I made it literally in like maybe 10, 15 minutes. It's amazing. So
That's Sounds amazing. I would so much try it.
Definitely. I'm so glad that I tried it when it was just like kind of like beta version. And I discovered I can create those videos that actually show, like, let's say Cypress in action. Because it's
Yeah,
one thing to read about it
yeah,
with screenshots, but sometimes it's so much nicer to see it in action,
yeah. And
right? So,
different people might
oh
prefer
yeah, yeah,
different
yeah,
kinds of content, right? Like different
yes, yeah,
mediums, I mean.
yeah.
So,
So,
but you mentioned about like your creativity process on writing and doing your videos. So could you expand on like your view on the importance of doing this kind of knowledge sharing?
so think about the impact you're making
Yeah,
as a professional, right? So I can code something that will probably solve my problem. Maybe I code it for a user or a client that will solve their problem, right? So effective one. Now imagine I code something and I describe how I solve that coding problem, right? Maybe for example, in our case, I describe how to write, let's say, a test using Cypress for email flow,
yeah,
right? Well, I solve it myself and I describe how to do it. All of a sudden, probably 100 people. Like my blog posts at 100, reads per day for each. Okay, so 100 people all of a sudden get benefit from this work,
yeah,
right? One versus 100. Now, if I, for example, put it in Cypress documentation, right, how to do something, which will reach a much wider audience,
yeah,
right? So I benefit more. If I, do a meetup presentation, right, or a conference talk, it will reach probably thousands of people,
yeah,
right? So you get so much more benefit from not just doing a work of one, but also
yeah,
communicating with other people on a team, other people in a community, other potential clients, right? But if you're just working by yourself in a room, you're not a good engineer.
yeah, yeah.
Literally, you're not.
That's a very good way to see it.
Yeah.
Like in the past, it used to be like if you are the one that knows it, they can't fire you because you have all the information. But now
Yes.
companies actually they look for people that know how to share their knowledge and become
Yes.
like you were leaving Cyprus, but you left a legacy and people have this great documentation and great plugins and great libraries that they can simply use it without yourself being there, right? That's just
Exactly.
awesome.
You cannot be everywhere, right? You cannot sell customer support enough. But
Yeah,
your examples, your documentation, your videos remain instead of you.
exactly.
And
Yes.
they can be there 24/7 around
Yeah.
the world.
Yeah, even after you were not in this world anymore, right?
Yeah, yeah. I still
Yeah.
plan to stick around this world, but but even if I'm
Yeah. And Gleb, changing the subject a little bit, I would love to hear from you uh, a little bit of what is it like working at Cypress.io, and what do you see as the biggest opportunities and challenges of building such a disruptive product?
so Cypress now teams. There is a test runner team that works on open source, right? That's what we see on GitHub. There is another team that works mostly on component testing, right? Something I started like 3 years ago. Now it's part of Cypress product. So we have a component testing team. Again, open source. You can see them
Yeah.
working. There is a services team that works on a dashboard. Like that's what actually allows us to work as a company.
Yeah.
All your test artifacts, parallelization, test flakiness, test analytics, GitHub integration, all this nice
Yeah.
jazz.
Yeah.
That's the services team, right? We also have a few other teams like success, like people helping customers, people helping other users, and so on. We have a marketing team that organizes our world famous webinars and the front end conference. So now we reach a point where a test runner team cannot just say, oh, we're going to add this or change this, right?
Hmm.
Because if you change, for example, how test results are recorded, well, now the services team has to change it as well,
Yeah.
right? So there's now more planning and more planning long term, right?
Hmm.
Which is normal in a startup, right? You cannot be one team that just iterates week by week by week. You now have
Yeah.
to kind of think, what do we want to release next month,
Hmm.
right? So Cypress Test Runner has releases every 2 weeks on Mondays. And major releases where we put breaking changes, we actually wait probably every 2 months. So the next version probably will be either 760, which is a feature release, or 800, right?
Hmm.
And we might put some breaking changes there. Maybe we'll remove like side route or something. But we also have to communicate with our teams.
Yeah.
So now there is a little bit, each team has like a team lead, the product manager who communicate, try to align everyone, make sure that our developer experience team, which is separate, is working while we work on the features, documenting. So by the time, let's say, something comes out, there is good documentation and good examples, and
Yeah.
everyone is happy. And also sometimes doing the webinars, right, for the topic together with marketing team. So I honestly, it's very lightweight process, right? There is kind of like backlog grooming, issue prioritization that happens, and sometimes like a sync between teams, but it's very,
Hmm.
very lightweight. We're still
Yeah.
not like bureaucracy. I think we kind of reached the best of both worlds where we can plan a couple of months in advance, but it's not all this is a deadline, drop
Yeah.
everything, work overtime, but we have to deliver. No, we're all human and we all know that that doesn't work. But there has to be some thinking with a lot of kind of leeway for implementation.
That's awesome. That's super awesome. Uh, Gleb, I am having so much of a good time speaking with you here,
Thank
and
you.
I could spend a lot more time, but we are kind of reaching the end of this session. So, usually, when I kind of interview other professionals, I like to leave the last moment for you to promote any of your personal initiatives, such as your YouTube channel, which I am subscribed, so I highly recommend that other people to subscribe it as well. And I use your blog post a lot. So it's your time now for promoting yourself and the things that you do.
Thank you. I don't want to promote myself. People probably will find me, and if it's useful. The only thing I want to remind every listener is that we have to worry about the global warming and climate crisis. So if you want to do something good for the climate, join an organization in your town or city or where you live, right? You can even join online one that works on climate crisis. There is Greenpeace, there is Extinction Rebellion, 350. Just find a climate organization and join it, right? Because we cannot change our lifestyle individually to make a difference. But if we join as a group, we can actually affect the government, affect big business, and affect our, destiny as a planet. So this is
That's so
what
true.
my ask is for everyone.
Thanks for that. Leb, I had a very good time speaking with you here. I hope you had the same as well. And
Absolutely.
for you that are watching this video, if you liked it, please leave a like. Don't forget to subscribe to the channel to incentivize all the initiatives of the Talking About Testing. And I hope to see you at the next time. Bye.
Take care.